Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'll just let you get settled, and then we can get things underway. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm Professor Steve Darby. I'm the Associate Dean for Research for the Faculty of Environmental and Life Sciences, and it's my privilege to be kind of convening this session and facilitating these professorial inaugural lectures. I don't want to say very much at all before we hand over to our main speakers and their introducers, but I did just want to explain why we've established this series, and it's been going for a little while now and seems to be working quite well. There are two or three main reasons for doing it. The first is by far and away the most important. It's simply to celebrate the successes of those of us in the academic community who've relatively recently been elevated to a professorial position, because that is and still is a major career landmark. And I think it is something that is well worth celebrating. And I hope that the speakers will agree at the end of the day, inaugural lectures are often fun because we tend to be curious people. It's really interesting to get a little bit of insight into the research that people have been undertaking to get to that landmark, but also to hear about, maybe often we hear about the challenges, the circumstances, the people that have helped them to get there as well. And I've found these lectures in that series to be really informative in both of those ways. The other couple of reasons are related. I think it is important to offer some kind of event or events that bring people together in a good, upbeat mood, particularly perhaps in the current circumstances that the sector finds itself in. And part of that is that you'll see that here in Fells, we've got a slightly unusual format where we do these inaugural lectures as a double header with two colleagues, usually from different schools. And we don't always do it this way, but I think today is a good example of that, where what we're trying to do is bring together people and their audiences who perhaps would not always meet and talk to each other in areas that are in some way broadly connected. So that's the context for the series. I hope that you enjoy the afternoon, and all of you are very, very welcome to join us afterwards. There's a drinks reception afterwards. But what I'm going to do now is hand over to Professor Alison Richardson, who will introduce our first speaker this afternoon. So thank you, Alison.
Thanks, Steve. And Jane Pritchard, our head of school, is very sorry that she can't be with you this afternoon in person. Unfortunately, she is unwell. But actually, as Mari Carmen and I were just reflecting, actually, it's probably very suitable that I am actually here to make these introductory remarks. It's a real pleasure to introduce the inaugural lecture of Professor Mari Carmen, what we prefer to call MC Portillo Vega, as we all know her, those who know her well as MC. I've had a real privilege of observing MC's growth as an academic since she responded to my invitation to step into the leadership role of the Applied Research Collaboration Wessex. Her career to date, in a relatively short space of time, has been remarkable. Not simply for its scale or reach, but also for its clarity of purpose. Her work has been driven by a very simple but demanding question. What does it mean to live well with long-term illness, and how can health systems respond more humanely, more intelligently, and more justly to that reality? That question has shaped everything she has done as a nurse, as a researcher, a teacher, and as an academic leader. She began her professional life in Spain in clinical nursing and has always worked closely with people living with neurological conditions and their families. Those early experiences have left a lasting imprint. They've grounded her scholarship in the everyday realities of those living with long-term conditions. Uncertainty, adaptation, resilience. Their perspectives have never left her, even as her work has expanded to influence national and international research agendas. Over the course of her academic career, and I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more of that as she talks in her lecture, she's built a body of research that challenges biomedical framing of chronic illness. Instead, she's consistently emphasised quality of life, social relationships, community resources, and personalised care. Her work does not ask how people can fit into systems, but how systems must adapt to people. Another very striking feature of MC's career is her capability to build. And that's build programmes of research, build research groups, build collaborations, and build and nurture people. MC is someone who could genuinely write the manual on establishing, developing, and sustaining a research group. From the beginnings, as a team of one, she has grown a thriving, diverse community of researchers drawn from a very wide range of professions, disciplines, and career stages. Her commitment to building capacity and capability in nurse-led research is infectious. She's created an environment in which people feel welcomed, included, and able to thrive. Colleagues describe her leadership as demanding, maybe a feature that you maybe inherited from me, perhaps, but deeply supportive. She sets high standards, not for her own personal visibility, but because she believes research should matter, methodologically, ethically, and practically. MC's influence reaches far beyond our University of Southampton. Her leadership role with the National Institute of Health and Care Research, with European research consortia and multiple advisory groups and funding panels. She's helping to shape, and indeed will in the future shape, applied health research. And it's about prioritising, assessing and translating those innovations into practice and increasing the numbers of international visitors and research teams, a myriad of a collection. Spain, Italy, China, Denmark, Norway, and many more. She's in many ways forged her own United Nations. But despite all of these positions of authority, what many people notice about MC is her accessibility, her willingness to mentor, to listen, to advocate, particularly for her early career researchers and the underrepresented voices. Her mentorship has supported and will continue to support the next generation of researchers, which I'm delighted as I begin to hand over the baton. And she'll carry her influence into their own academic and clinical lives. But above all, MC's career is characterised by integrity. Integrity in her scholarship, in her partnerships with communities and services, and in her insistence that research in long-term conditions must serve those who live with these conditions every day. This inaugural lecture marks not only a culmination of her work, but a moment to pause and to reflect on a career that continues to shape how we understand chronic illness, care, and collaboration. So it's my privilege to welcome Mari Carmen to deliver her inaugural address.
Thank you very much. I don't think I need to give the lecture anymore after this presentation. I think it's all covered. Thank you very much for joining me today in this inaugural lecture. It is a day of celebration for the University of Southampton, for health, for the School of Health Sciences, and overall for nursing and underrepresented professions in health and social care. I think the fact that I'm here today giving this lecture illustrates that nursing, it has a very strong presence in education, research, enterprise, practice, And we are making and giving away a lot of important things that need to be present in research as well. Today, I want to share with you my career and journey through being an academic nurse, and especially across Spain and UK. And I want to share with you important things like success can have different shapes and forms, and it's not always something linear and perfect as it could seem initially from a simple look. In this timeline, you can see like different milestones of my career, important things at the personal and professional levels that needed decisions to be made, and how these decisions have taken me to this presentation today. So everything started with nursing, and I'm pretty sure that nobody now cares about my career. They are all thinking, how could she endure that uniform as a nurse, student nurse? Yeah? Believe me, imagine running through corridors, lifting patients because manual and handling didn't matter at that time, doing medications, IVs, so many things that we needed to do with that uniform. Obviously, it was positively influenced by Florence Nightingale because of her super style in fashion, as you can see in the picture, yeah? And at that time, there was this rumor that the uniform had been designed by Christian Dior. Seriously, I'm not making it up, yeah? So they told us that probably just to make us wear the uniform with more dignity, probably, because it was a horrendous uniform. Everybody can agree on that, even the color, yeah? So these pictures are from my graduation day as a nurse. Everybody was very happy, as you can see. Probably everybody knowing me a little bit will know, of course, Mari Carmen had everything planned. So my idea was, I finished as a general nurse, and then I had already got an offer in a very specialized hospital in Spain, one of the top hospitals over there, to complete the specialty in OR, as a scrub nurse. You know, very few people know that I wanted to be a scrub nurse at the very beginning, yeah? So what I didn't know is that a few days after my last exam, I was going to receive a phone call from the University of Navarra, the School of Nursing, and that phone call was going to change dramatically my whole career direction. Just to give you some contextual information, in 1998, when I graduated, in Spain, we didn't have postgraduate studies for nurses at all. But the University of Navarra, in which I graduated as a nurse, had a vision. They thought this situation is not going to last forever. It's going to change at some point. So it is important that we select a few people and we prepare to be ahead of other competitors in the country. So I was one of them, lucky me. I had this meeting and I didn't know very much what I was agreeing to be honest, because I didn't have any clue about what research was about, yeah? So I said yes, because I always liked studying. And that meant that I was going to be sent to the UK to be prepared as a nurse researcher, completing postgraduate studies, master and PhD at King's College, London. Like me, there were others, but it was a privilege to become part of that change, historic change that was going to take place in Spain in a few years later. So my adventure started. I was traveling first time because I had never left the country before. I was traveling to the UK, King's College London, and I was studying my master and my PhD. I spent 6 years completing those studies. I also worked as a nurse at St. George's Hospital, Tooting Broadway, for a while. I need money because the scholarship wasn't that big, yeah? So and London is very expensive, as you know, and even at that time. And I spent time in the UK and also in Spain because my funders required that I need to collect Spanish data. They wanted all the data to be meaningful for the country. So imagine the amount of work translating things back and forwards. My PhD was an action research study. Main reason, I was so eager to change things in clinical practice. I wanted to make a difference, and I wanted it fast. I wanted just to complete my data and have something tangible there in clinical practice, thanks to my research. Beautiful dream, yeah? It was a massive piece of work. We developed a social rehabilitation program for neurological patients and carers. And we worked very closely with nurses because obviously, as it was an action research study, we need to involve them in the change of practice, let's say, yeah? So you can see a little bit how big my PhD was in terms of numbers, huge thing. Mainly because I wasn't happy with the first results of my social rehabilitation program. And then as an action research, you have the chance to go back and back again, improving things as you go. So I completed what is called 3 cycles, 30 months of full-time data collection, plus all the interviews that you can see, observations, field notes, plus training. I was very lucky at that time because that hospital where I did my data collection was very supportive of the topic I was covering, and they helped me digitalize all the information, so it was easy to create a routine for my own social rehabilitation program for nurses. I'm not going to be looking at all this data, don't worry about that, but my dream somehow came true. I was willing to change this in clinical practice, and actually my social rehabilitation program was successful. So you can see on this slide different things. There were improvements for patients. We were working with people with stroke, Parkinson's, and multiple sclerosis. And we were working with family carers. And you can see that there were significant changes in things related to return to work for carers, things related to leisure activities, and reintegration to normal living. But my PhD was way more than just changing things for patients. It was about working with nurses. It was about giving nurses tools to change practice, to improve things, and provide more holistic care. And that was quite exciting and moving at the time. Obviously, this is something I will never recommend my PhD students to do. This is cherry picking. So I have selected some quotes just to illustrate a little bit, yeah? But I think it's very exciting to see that even in small things, patients found benefits from the intervention. So, for example, the first quote is for a person with stroke. After the intervention, he decided to buy some pets, some parakeets, to keep himself company because he wanted to be happier at home and enjoy more life. Then nurses, something as little as having leaflets to hand over to patients, they found that very comfortable and giving them more confidence when it comes to sharing information and educating patients in the units. And in the last one, a carer of a person with Parkinson's disease, she felt that she was feeling more independent to go out and leave the patient alone when before she thought that it was very unsafe. So far everything was fine. I completed my PhD, my master. I was ready to go back. I had to go back actually because I was an investment. So the university have paid for everything. They have trained me. They have sent me away, and they were like, now you need to come back. So I went back to Spain, and during this period of time, a few things happened. First of all, I got married to my sweetheart, Pablo. We met when we were 15 years old, so imagine, it was a big milestone to achieve. Then I got ill, but not necessarily because of him, yeah. It was because of other things. I was diagnosed with a neutropenia, which is a problem connected to my immune system. And at that time, because they didn't know the nature of my neutropenia, I had to stay a little bit isolated. There were like 3 key messages. Avoid people with infections, avoid crowds. So imagine, no traveling, no conferences, no teaching, no crowds, yeah? And try not to eat certain things, yeah? So that this was my regimen, yeah? But that was okay because I had time to think and actually prepared me for COVID somehow because I was learning how to be socially isolated and productive at the same time. But at that time, when I came back to Spain, I got into something that I like calling a research limbo. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. So this infographic is showing you my postdoctoral career. This is all the steps I took, 4 big inflection points in my career where I had to make important decisions. and that clearly shaped where I am today. Yeah. So looking at the first inflection point is when I went back to Spain. Back to Spain after being trained in the UK, top university, King's College, ready to change the world with my research, let's say, yeah? And then I go to Spain, where I remember I told you there weren't postgraduate programs for nurses, and that remained the same until 2010. So 2006, me arriving in Spain, and then I became like a very weird specimen. A nurse researcher, what is that? Yeah. So I had to put up with things like physicians asking me, so what does it mean that you have a PhD? That you're going to rule more than us? That we will have to report to you? Things like that. And nurses, my own colleagues, asking me, so, but what do you need a PhD for? We already do research. You don't need to learn anything else. The research that was happening at that time was collecting data, measuring things for the physicians. So not clearly research throughout the whole journey, let's say. So I found myself in a big challenge and situation that I wanted to change. I thought, why have I done a PhD? Not to use it. You don't do a PhD for that. It's a lot of work. I thought, let's try to change things. And then I started having like a contingency plan. I thought, okay, so things that I can do. I can become a salesperson. I can just try to sell nursing. And I started going practically door to door, starting for those people I thought were more positive towards a nurse researcher, leading research teams, leading projects. I identified areas of where I could find funding for nurses, which was extremely difficult because the majority of the funding used to go especially for labs and this type of research, more not applied research at all. Yeah. And then I started building what I wanted to be a dream team. Always a dreamer. So I thought, let's build a dream team. Let's knock on doors. Let's talk to people. Let's see who is willing to support. Was this an easy task? Not at all. Many doors closed in my face, practically. Many people not understanding what we were doing, and until I managed to build my very first team. Some people say yes, and some people were willing to put a bet on us. Yeah. So I built my first transdisciplinary team, and we started focusing and working on Parkinson's disease and family care. So this is a picture of the Renace team. This is my first dream team. And there are three main things about this team and this Renace program. First of all, is transdisciplinary. And just keep in mind, I'm not saying multidisciplinary or it was transdisciplinary. And the main reason for that is that we were people from different disciplines. Obviously, me leading the team as a nurse, then we have a neurologist, we have people from voluntary organizations, we have sociologists, social workers, and so on. And it was very interesting because we were speaking so many different languages. We had meetings and we didn't understand what we meant in terms of research terminology, or even when I was talking about the needs of patients and they were talking about something more biomedical. It was very strange for us. And therefore, we need to spend a lot of meetings creating that transdisciplinary work, coming together and creating our own nomenclature to understand what we meant and we wanted to do through our research. A second important thing is this multicentric. So we didn't want to have a team that was built on competition across different universities. So we were bringing, opponent universities together, competitors, and working on the same thing that we wanted to build and change. And finally, Renace is the seat of my work today. So many of the things that I do today are based on this work, very first work. I'm very proud of this team when we built it at the time. And I could say that we are different people, or some of us are different, yeah? We are working in different countries, different populations, maybe different needs, but it's the very same ethos that we have. So this slide is showing a kind of diagram of what my plans for research for Renace were at that time. So you can see that we were actually Renasi remained up to here before I came to the UK, yeah. But we started working with Parkinson's disease, and that decision was based on two things, but mainly one basic one. We wanted to be practical. I had spent a lot of time knocking on doors, trying to build a team, and we already had some experience in the area of neurology. So we decided, okay, let's go for this one first, and let's see what we can get out of it. And the other reason is because there was a gap as well in the literature. So the majority of the evidence at that time about living with a chronic illness was very much focused on the most prevalent conditions, heart failure, diabetes, and COPD mainly. So we say, okay, let's fill a gap about Parkinson's disease. We have the team, we have the connections. It's going to be easier for us. So we managed to secure the first funding for our research. That was 1,900 euro. So we started with that. So no funding is little. That's a key message for everybody today, yeah? Because we just with that little seed, we managed to develop a huge amount of work. So we focus on understanding the phenomenon of living with Parkinson's disease for both patients and carers. Then we identify factors that could influence a positive or a negative living with Parkinson's disease. And then we develop interventions and assessments that could help us measure the outcomes of our interventions. Just some little findings about it, only those that are especially interesting that are clearly connected to my work today. So when it comes to Parkinson's disease, obviously this line in the middle could represent the condition. It's neurodegenerative, so it's going to be progressive and moving in a straight line, yeah? But then we identify that when people live with Parkinson's disease, there are positive and negative living. Same, nothing, no rocket science so far, same as in other conditions. And then we identify special stages, like something we call normalization. Then we have something called pseudo-normalization and extraordinariness. And when it comes to the process of living, it was fluctuating. But some factors were responsible for that. And we could identify things like coping skills, treatment, career health, personal resources, networks, and information. And we clearly identify factors that were common to other conditions as well. So actually, that was a very interesting finding because Parkinson's disease is very different medically speaking compared to other long-term conditions, but still, there were commonalities with the others. The only thing that we didn't know at this stage is how those factors interacted with each other. And we needed to understand, because in order to develop intervention, you need to prioritize. So then we move into understanding how they interacted to each other. And then we found that, for both patients and family carers, it was the same factors, even if family carers didn't have Parkinson's disease. So we understood that we found that coping skills were essential to develop psychosocial adjustment to the condition, and then psychosocial adjustment was essential to develop quality of life. Therefore, if you tackle coping skills, you increase quality of life for both patients and carers. So after that, we developed more studies, not talking about them today, yeah, but we developed interventions to tackle those factors. We developed measuring scales. One of them is the living with long-term condition scale that we developed first for Parkinson's disease, and now we have versions for carers for other conditions and versions in English as well that we are using here in the UK. So you can see how something like 1,900 euro can bring and build up something huge in the end and across countries. Then I met Anne Rogers, and my whole career changed again. It's not like I changed my career easily, don't worry about that. But, it changed because then we started thinking and talking about other things. We secured funding for a European project with a 7th framework program, EU-wise. And we focused on other long-term conditions, not only Parkinson, things were changing. So we look at self-management support through system leads, commissioners, professionals, voluntary organizations, and individuals with long-term conditions, and how all these different systems of support could improve the way that they were managing long-term conditions at home, let's say, or in the community. So when I started in the EU-wise, there were three main changes in my career. First of all, I expanded the focus of my research. I left Parkinson behind as a single condition, and those working with me, you know that I am obsessed about bringing conditions together. And then I moved into other long-term conditions. Then, thanks to Anne, I introduced the sociological component of research into my own thinking, let's say, so she completely biased me in that sense. And then that was very helpful to understand some of the phenomena that I was encountering through my research. And obviously, the most important thing that came up from the EU-wise is that I decided to come to the UK, back to the UK, join Southampton University, and started working in here. So, looking again at this infographic, when I met Anne Rogers, let's say, I ended up in this area here, yeah? So, obviously, again, we were making decisions, important decisions at home, because it was a time to decide, shall we move as a family? In this case, my husband and my child, at that time, he was 3 years old. Shall we move to the UK? Shall we expand our horizons? What shall we do at this point of time? So important inflection point. Obviously, I'm here, so you know what the decision, the final decision was at the end. And I just decided to come to the UK and join the University of Southampton. Keep in mind what I'm saying here. It was a time to reinvent myself. So I was shifting my careers towards an international approach at this time. And the challenge was that I needed to rebuild from scratch, practically. So I had 17 years of experience when I joined the University of Southampton. So I wasn't a very junior person. I had my experience, but then I came here and sometimes it felt like I was going backwards because it was learning everything, learning about the nursing curriculum, learning about research processes, learning about funding scheme. Oh my God, how many funding opportunities that you had in here compared to what I was competing in Spain. Thank God we didn't have work drive at that time because it would have been a total pain. So I feel relieved in that sense. So step by step, I was learning things. And at some point I realized that, you know, I need to find my own research niche here in the country. And that research niche was all the time sitting next to me, that it was long-term conditions. And then it's when in 2018, I became a professor of long-term conditions, because I didn't say that at the very beginning, but today is my very delayed inaugural lecture. So at that time, when I became a professor of long-term conditions in 2018, it was when we were submitting the first applied research collaboration program. Alison has mentioned it today. And actually, it was a very good coincidence for me, because it's when you start as a professor and you need to develop your strategy. Sometimes it's good to have as many platforms and resources as possible. And the ARC, although it was at the beginning difficult to navigate, it was an excellent platform for me. The ARC gave me a further understanding of applied research, gave me further understanding of patient and public involvement, of how to work with local authorities. I was at that time a little bit green in that sense, so I need to learn quite a lot. And this was like an open book for me to achieve all that. You can see that my theme, the long-term conditions one, is here in the middle in connection to others, healthy communities, aging and dementia, workforce, and other aspects that were essentially important at that time. So at the time I was growing through the ARC, I was reaching the two last inflection points of my career at the bottom. And it is important to highlight that there were some important difference between the two first inflection points and the two others, because my concerns, my achievements as well, and my worries, let's say, were very much focused on things related to my own research niche, my own growth at the beginning. But then if you look at the two ones at the bottom of the infographic, they are more about somebody else's worries. what about my team? How can I support my team? How can I work with others? How can I make them be promoted, secure funding? So it's very different approach, very different worries, and actually coinciding with when you become a professor is the burden of being a professor, let's say, yeah? And so we have achieved a lot of things as a long-term conditions research group. So I'm going to talk in plural now, because actually one of the reasons I'm here is also because of them, yeah? So when I became a professor, the main worry was that, oh goodness, I want to change things and how we tackle long-term conditions. Nothing that wasn't happening in other countries. I think there are so many commonalities across countries as well. So we wanted to change. The challenge was that everything was very traditional, very biomedical, and we wanted to move into something that was more inclusive, engaging with communities, working with underrepresented communities, underrepresented groups, and professions as well. And we managed to develop a person-centered care approach, multisectoral partnerships, and better support in the community for people with multiple long-term conditions and their families. And we are getting a very strong name, I think, in terms of engaging underserved communities and working with them, which is a very important breakthrough in long-term conditions research. And then the very last inflection point that you can see on the slide is where I am today. My dream is to build sustainable teams and make sure that there is succession planning, that I can support the future leads in the field, for example. Yeah, the challenges are the same for everybody: money, how to build further partners, time, the drive as well. Some people are more motivated than others, let's say. Yeah, but we are achieving a lot of things, and this is like the drive we have as a team. So we really want to work with people with long-term conditions and multiple long-term conditions. We have a particular focus on those facing social disadvantage, polypharmacy, frailty, and poor access to community support. So I was saying that my dream nowadays is to build a sustainable team, the future leaders. And I'm very proud to say that at present I'm mentoring and supporting the future leaders in the field. We've been growing very fast, as you can see on the slide. So we were 9 members in 2019, and now we are 55. Not everybody is on the slide because it's extremely difficult to find pictures online. Some people are like invisible, seriously. So what can I say about this team? Is again the same ethos as in Renace. We are from different disciplines, different career stages, voluntary sectors, public contributors, commissioners, underrepresented professors, multicultural backgrounds, including myself. And this is really, look at their faces. They are looking excited and full of energy to change the world. They are laughing, yes. It's like I'm demanding, you see. So I think this is very exciting to see them in there. We work in an area that is difficult, long-term conditions, and we really want to make a difference and change things. We are changing already things and achieving impact in multiple things. I always need to see the list to make sure I don't leave anything out. But we are developing workforce knowledge and skills in person-centered care. We have produced international evidence-based support resources, and these are being accessed by people from 12 countries, which is a very good reach. We are developing assessment instruments that are person-centered, some of them already in different languages: German, Spanish, English, and Chinese, and they are being used in clinical practice and in research in different countries as well. We are influencing policy and major global policy reports in terms of mental health services and workforce training. We are influencing education as well. 2 modules in physiotherapy and nursing had been developed based on our research in long-term conditions, and obviously we are teaching as well in those modules. We have secured funding for studentships through NIHR for undergraduates that are interested in research and want to be initiated in research and join our group. We have also secured funding for masters, for PhDs, So we are getting there. It's getting stronger in that sense. Capacity building is a very strong thing in our group, I could say. You can see how we are growing, and you can see how we are planning for the future as well. So these are some of the programs that we have nowadays in the research group. As I said, we are working quite diligently about person-centered assessments and care. Everything about integrated and multisectoral resources, supported self-management, helping people with also physical and mental health long-term conditions. And very important for us, building sustainable neighborhood health, which is very much aligned to policy nowadays. Obviously, I've been talking about inequalities, inclusive research. We couldn't have out anything related to digital inequalities, research implementation, and challenges in multiple long-term conditions. And you can see at the top of the whole slide that we are very much about applied research. We really want to change things in clinical practice. We don't want to end up just with a wonderful paper. We want to change and build something else. This ideology can also be seen in how the new ARC Part 2, let's say now, is evolving. So from this diagram in which we were connecting different themes, now you can see that it's more about neighborhoods. It's a collaboration, building different things and how they are interconnected. We are talking about something as different as data and technology compared to long-term conditions. They look very separate, but they can be clearly connected. We are talking about healthy communities, coastal and rural areas as well, and how we can work with populations in those areas as well. So it's very much about the national impact that we can achieve, bringing all these themes together and using important resources like, in this case, ARC2 as well. That is about national expansion, but I'm very privileged to say that I have very strong international connections, and we all share the same problems and the same dreams, let's say. So you can see how we are expanding. The green ones are our new friends, let's say, yeah? And definitely this brings multiple opportunities for, again, further capacity building and also for making a big difference at a more international level. So after sharing my journey as an academic nurse with you, I also wanted to reflect a little bit on what has hindered or helped me in the process. So long-term conditions is a very tough area of research, very much dominated by male medics, physicians, and some of the players in the field have been around for a long time, so they are very established and nobody can move them, let's say, yeah? And then it's me with my research group. What we bring is new blood and the represented professions, a very fresh view of what the research about long-term conditions should be, and we are trying to change this. In my case, as a lead in long-term conditions, I'm a part of a minority. First of all, I am a woman. I'm a nurse. And I am an immigrant, a European immigrant with this lovely Spanish accent that can be helpful and sometimes cannot. Yeah. And obviously all these things together can bring up the imposter syndrome that I have in myself, and that can be something that hinders the process. Somebody will say, you don't have imposter syndrome. Yes, I do have imposter syndrome. The problem is when you let the imposter syndrome decide how much you value and how much, what skills do you have, let's say, yeah? And I like this quote very much. It's like, my imposter syndrome, I started to like it because it keeps me humble. It's true, it keeps me humble and it keeps me working as well. And it reminds me of the long journey I had to take and continue and complete to be here with you today presenting this. Another important thing that helps is visibility. A while ago, I attended a presentation about impact, and they were saying that there are two important steps to achieve impact. One of them is you have to do good research, obviously, like very strong research. And the second, you have to make your research interesting or visible. You have to make noise, let's say, yeah? So This is something that I have always tried to do, to be in the news, to present, to make noise. And actually, this has been extremely helpful to get new connections, to get new contacts, new networks, people willing to collaborate because, they are doing that. It's the fact that you don't appear in the news, it doesn't mean that you don't do the work or you are not finding something extremely good, but it means that other people may not know that you are getting that and they may not contact you. I think this brings very good opportunities, not only for myself, but also for my team. And I think this is something that is very much connected to what we do. Of course, I'm sorry for the big picture. Public contributors. Here present today, we have Sally Days and Jean Hughes, and they are essential. They bring to the table the reality wisdom. Sometimes we can be in our offices just thinking about wonderful things that we want to do with our research, but it might not be the reality of what is really needed. So we need people like them to bring us down and say, no, how inclusive your research is, how realistic is. This is not what people want. And then they focus and direct us again. So thank you very much for that. Obviously, a very strong point, family and friends, feeling loved, being reminded that not everything is about work. I need that sometimes, yeah. So, which is fantastic. Thank you very much, Pablo and Diego, because actually you put a bet on me. You brought me, you came here to the UK. Actually, this picture is the very same day they arrived in the UK. He was a bit tired, as you can see. Also finding friends, and Dave, you are my family in the UK as well. You've been, our friends supporting us on the journey, and also friends, in other countries. And I know that some of you will be online and that have always believed and again, place your bet on me, thinking that we could achieve big things. Work hard and play hard. Yeah, that's essential. I hate meetings where I don't have any fun. So like some laughter, making jokes of big problems or maybe mistakes, little mistakes that we have made is like, oof. So let's fix this. Let's take this with some humor. I think that's essential. This environment, research and education is very stressful and demanding. If we don't have some humor and we don't have fun and we don't socialize, even with our colleagues as well, I think there's no point in it then. Yeah. And then very important, collective versus your own ambition and drive. So that's essential, being able to pass your energy to others. Ambition, motivation, and drive can be contagious, and the other way around as well if you don't have them. So this is something very important for my research and for me as a leader. We move as magnets, sometimes I say. We work, we support each other, we try to motivate each other, and actually you can achieve bigger things like that. This is not artificial intelligence. This is actually happening every year in my hometown, Pamplona. It's our festival, the San Fermines. Maybe you have heard of them or not, but it's something that everybody has to experience at least once in a lifetime, let's say. Of course, very important to me, my mentors. You are never too senior to need a mentor. That's essential. Today, I feel privileged because I have 6 very strong and inspirational women that have supported me at different stages of my career. They had this ability to slap me and cuddle me at the same time, like wake up, what are you doing? And then, you're doing very well. So they have been very supported in terms of, my successes, my failures as well, when I get frustrated, because I do get frustrated as well, yeah. And I wanted to, some of them might be online today, so it's unfortunately, you're not here present and I cannot give you a big hug, but others are here present, and I wanted to have a little present for you as a thank you for that. So let me mention these 6 wonderful women, yeah. First of all, Maribel Salacibar, she was my first mentor. She introduced me to higher education. Thanks to Maribel, I became a lecturer, and she supported me with all the funding to come to the UK. So thank you very much, because thanks to you, Maribel, I'm here today and I am what I am today. of course, Jennifer Wilson Barnett. She was the person that introduced me to nursing research. And believe me, I was super green. I didn't even know that there were two types of research, nothing at all, yeah? So she had to put up with my naive understanding of research because she was my master dissertation supervisor and my PhD dissertation supervisor. So thank you very much as well, Jenny, for that. Sarah Cowley, thank you very much for joining us today. And what I could say is that I have this little token for you. And thank you very much. Thank you. She was my second supervisor in my PhD, and she introduced me to applied research. So, Alison, you have to thank her for that. Yeah. So, because you gave a lecture in my master program about action research, is where I fell in love about action research. And then you became my second supervisor. And actually, you were the good cop in all the supervisor meetings. You always were nice. Jenny was more like, you have to do this, but you were very nice in that sense. And I remember that you taught me very well that you had to be patient with the nurses because I was getting nervous. They are not changing. And you helped me very much with that. Thank you very much. And thank you very much. Because of you, I'm here in Southampton University. So really, Southampton University should give you like an envelope with money. You widened my vision of research. You taught me what a big research group should be, how to bring different people together. You also became somebody I wanted, I admired, a mentor I wanted to become. And then I became your stalker, practically, because I came to the UK and I followed you. Thank you very much as well. Of course, Alison. Alison has helped me realize as a professor. So you have been essential. Since I became a professor, you held my hand. You put me in a shopping window, so that I needed that very much as well. And I remember something, one sentence you told me in a meeting that I will never forget is like, you have to choose your battles. So, and then I think that got stuck with me for a while. So thank you very much, because obviously you've been essential in this last phase of my career. And I wanted to have something for you as well. Thank you. My last mentor is Marianne Knight from NHI Infrastructure. So she's very new. She just started as a mentor, let's say, but she's gonna be somebody essential for me and to pursue my ambition in further leadership in NIHR. So I'm not sure if she's online, but thank you very much for that as well. Just finishing today. You wanted to take a picture, yeah. Just finishing today, working across countries, across sectors, across universities, the number of collaborators and funders is huge. I'm pretty sure I might have forgotten somebody. Apologies for that. But I just wanted also to acknowledge them. And I'll finish here. And thank you very much. It ain't over. I still have battery for further work, yeah? Thank you very much.
So fabulous talk. Thank you very much. You've timed it to perfection as well, for which I'm very grateful. We do have time, therefore, for some questions. So please, if there are people who would like to ask you something.
What would you do differently?
Well, patience. I have always been a very impatient person. Yeah, like I want things now. So I think that's something important to change. I think maybe this sounds very romantic, but for example, all the difficulties I faced when I went back to Spain, I think they have made me who I am today. So maybe I like the pain. I'll go through that again, yeah, probably. But maybe in a more strategic way to save time, let's say, because, I think I was reading people at that time and I wasted some time knocking on doors that I shouldn't have, let's say. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's one.
What would be a wish for your future research?
Well, changing the whole perception of long-term conditions and how things are, for example, implemented in clinical practice, making a clear difference at that way. We are producing impact, but we still have a lot of work to do to make something sustainable, like the way, personalized care becoming a routine, is not having to introduce it, through research, let's say. Yeah.
So what would you say to yourself from now to Mari Carmen when she started the career study nurse at the University of Navarra? What kind of advice would you give her?
Probably you're gonna get there, something like that, because maybe it's because of my impatience, let's say, yeah. But I remember when I was doing my PhD and my master, I was very frustrated, and I was, feeling like maybe I wasn't good enough, or I can't do this. This is not for me. I'm not as good as other researchers. And probably it was me need to be more mature. When you are in your early 20s and you start doing PhDs, you don't have a lot of clinical experience, then that can go against you quite a lot. So I would say that to me. You're gonna get there. Don't worry. You're gonna get and achieve big things.
Do you do?
Well, they're coming thick and fast, so we're getting here first, and there's two over here.
So, if you had a magic wand and you could change 3 things, what would you change?
In relation to what?
In relation to where you want to end up. So, what would facilitate what your vision is?
Okay, then a big pot of funding for my research group, check. Then permanent positions for everybody working with me. Then and definitely, more capacity to help people in more need or in more underserved areas, for example, which is still very difficult. We are working on that, but it's something that I would like to change. Suddenly having super access to all of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing such an inspiring and honest journey. And I think my question is, you touched on imposter syndrome. What are your top tips for dealing with it?
Well, I tend to work more. Yeah, that's how I normally manage it. I remember, and actually this is coming very much, and I remember when I had that even from my PhD, yeah? When I was doing my PhD, I remember I talked to Ian Norman, because he was one of the professors at King's College. So he had organized some groups that were like support groups for PhD students, and I asked him, can I stop going to those groups? Because every time I go there, I get very stressed because I think I'm behind compared to the others, and then I stuff myself with work at home. That's what I was doing. I was going there, I'm not good enough, and then I was going at home and working too much. So yeah, that's one of the things. The other thing is, I think everybody has imposter syndrome. So that's the first thing to remember. It's not you, and actually, it's not that bad. Sometimes, what I said about keeping you humble, I think is important. Not feeling that you are on top of the iceberg. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
I'm so glad I came today, MC. Congratulations, and that was a lovely talk. Also very lovely to see the pictures of you having fun and acknowledging that you need to have some level of balance in your life. Did you struggle with work-life balance through this exciting, adventurous journey?
I could say yes. Obviously, I when I got married, I had finished all my master. I think that helped as well because, Pablo was my boyfriend at that time, but he was in Spain, I was in the UK, so you can just, it's more difficult to get a balance. But sometimes I do. Obviously, sometimes I had to put some time and some work over the weekend because I'm submitting something, but I always try to do something. And, you can say that as well. I always try to find time to socialize and say, look, I have this period of time sharing when I have my deadlines. My family knows everything I'm getting into. If I have deadlines, so I'm going to do something, it's like, I have deadline on the 1st, until the 1st, I'm buried. Then I'm all yours. So we try to create a balance like that. I can say that for me, I wouldn't call myself a workaholic, but I like my job. I love what I do too much. I'm always telling everybody, you occupy my thoughts a lot. Because I like thinking about, what am I going to do with this? I'm going to talk to this other. Something I really enjoy. So it's easier somehow.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think we should give Diego the last.
Just the microphone, Diego.
Where are my flowers?
Let's be waiting.
Killer question, isn't it? MC, thank you so much again for a wonderful talk. Shall we give a fantastic